After a long, draining day at the office, all Adanna wanted was to get home, kick off her heels and rest her tired legs. But that night, as she strolled through the dimly lit streets of Abuja, a stranger grabbed her arm and whispered urgently,
Please, you have to help.
"Please,
Just for a few minutes.
just keep walking and pretend you're my wife."
Your wife?
That moment sparked a chain of events Adanna never imagined, full of tension, unexpected laughter, and a connection that felt deeper than reality. The soft glow of fluorescent lights buzzed above Adanna Ease's desk, casting long shadows across the empty accounting office. It was nearly 10 at night, and the silence was heavy. Her eyes, ringed with exhaustion, flicked to the bottom corner of her laptop screen. 9:47 p.m. Another late night. She removed her glasses and rubbed her temples, her fingers stiff from typing and sorting reports all day. Her back ached, a dull, persistent throb at the base of her spine, a consequence of sitting in one position for too long. She glanced around. The other desks were deserted. Everyone else had rushed out before sunset, eager to beat Abuja's Friday evening traffic. But not Adanna. She had no husband waiting, no child to tuck in, no friend texting her to join a last-minute hangout. She was 32, single, and, though she rarely admitted it, lonely. She sighed and leaned back in her seat. "That's the last one," she muttered, slipping the final report into a well-worn brown folder. Her life had become a loop. Wake, work, go home, repeat. A silent rhythm no one applauded. The promotion she'd been quietly working toward kept her motivated, but the cost was mounting. She packed her things and turned off the desk lamp. Outside, the city was alive in contrast to her sterile workspace. Headlights painted golden streaks across the pavement. Music throbbed from nearby lounges. Laughter echoed in the distance. At the curb, she opened her Bolt app and sighed when she saw the surge price. 4,000 Naira to go 5 kilometers, she mumbled. "I'd rather walk." It wasn't just the money. She needed to move, stretch her legs, feel the night air. With her bag slung over one shoulder and the folder hugged tightly to her chest, she turned and began walking toward her flat in Garki. Her office heels tapped rhythmically against the sidewalk, muffled by the occasional honk or revving engine. The streets of Wuse, too, were vibrant as usual. She thought of Melissa, her best friend from university, who was now married and living in Port Harcourt. The last time they saw each other was 2 months ago during a business trip. They had met for lunch, reminisced about school, and promised to keep in touch. But life got in the way, as it always did. "It's hard making new friends when you're grown," Adanna whispered, almost to herself. She walked past a restaurant where a couple was feeding each other cake. Her chest tightened, not with jealousy, but with an ache she didn't have the words for. Ahead, just as she crossed the corner of Aminu Kano Crescent, the door of a bustling bar suddenly flung open. A man rushed out. She didn't have time to step aside. Crash! He collided with her full force. Her folder slipped from her grip, papers fluttering everywhere, onto the sidewalk, under a parked car, and into the air like oversized confetti. "Oh no! My reports!" she gasped, immediately kneeling down to retrieve them. "I'm so sorry," the man said, crouching beside her. "I didn't see you. I didn't mean to." "Do you know what you've just done?" Her voice rose with frustration. "These are client documents. I spent hours organizing them." The man paused, then began gathering papers with visible regret. "I truly apologize. I was distracted and I wasn't looking." She glanced up, and for the first time took in the man's face. His hazel eyes were alert, apologetic. He had a clean-shaven jaw, save for a little stubble, and dark, close-cropped hair. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a GQ feature. Crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, black slacks. He didn't look like someone in a hurry, but his eyes flicked nervously over her shoulder. "Are these reports for work?" he asked quickly, still helping gather them. "Yes, I'm an accountant. I was heading home when—" He suddenly went rigid. His back straightened, his eyes locked on something behind her. "Please," he said, voice low, urgent. "Just go with me on this. Walk with me. Pretend you're my wife." "Excuse me?" Adanna blinked. He gently, but firmly, looped his arm through hers. His hand was warm, slightly trembling. "Please, just smile. I'll explain in a moment." Before she could protest, 2 well-dressed people, a man and woman, stepped out of the bar, scanning the street. "Tony!" "Finally!" the woman called, her voice high and bright. She waved as they approached. Adanna froze. The man beside her squeezed her arm reassuringly and smiled toward the couple. "Sorry, my wife just arrived and I stepped out to meet her." Wife? The woman raised her brows, visibly surprised. Tony turned to Adanna. This is Adanna, my wife. Adanna's feet moved before her mind caught up. Her arm remained linked with Tony's, warm under his touch, but her thoughts were racing. What am I doing? The elegant couple approaching them wore the kind of wealth that didn't shout, but whispered in designer stitching and subtle confidence. The woman, tall and poised, wore a silk green blouse and cream trousers, paired with minimalist gold jewelry. Her sleek braids shimmered under the bar's outdoor lighting. The man beside her was broader, dressed in a charcoal blazer and crisp white shirt, his face lined with familiarity. "We thought you disappeared again, Tony," the woman said with a teasing lilt. "You always vanish at the most interesting times." "Lara," Tony greeted, keeping his smile effortless. "I just stepped out to meet Adanna." Adanna forced a polite smile, every muscle in her face taut with uncertainty. "It's lovely to meet you both." "Lara Adaniran," the woman said, extending her hand. "And this is Kunle, my husband. You must be a saint to have married this man. He's been dodging commitment since university." Adanna managed a soft laugh, trying to suppress the rising anxiety in her chest. "He does keep me on my toes." Tony glanced at her, subtle gratitude in his eyes. There was a flicker of relief on his face, as if her response had saved him from something bigger than she could yet understand. "You two must join us for a quick drink," Kunle said, already gesturing toward the bar's entrance. "Oh, we don't want to intrude," Tony began. "Nonsense," Lara cut in. "You've hidden her long enough. We've waited years to see the woman who finally tamed Abuja's most elusive bachelor." Adanna's brain screamed no, but her body moved alongside them, drawn into the cozy elegance of the rooftop bar. The interior was dimly lit with hanging lanterns and candlelit tables. The music was a soft fusion of jazz and Afrobeat, the kind that melted into the background yet gave the place a rhythm. A waiter led them to a booth near the glass railing that overlooked the glittering cityscape. Adanna slid in beside Tony, their legs accidentally brushing beneath the table. She stiffened. He didn't move away. "Wine?" Tony asked, his voice low. "Just for her." She nodded. He ordered drinks with the ease of someone who knew the place well. Adanna glanced around the bar. Chic, expensive, the kind of place she'd usually feel too underdressed for in her work shirt and sensible flats. But tonight, she was a wife. His wife. And they had a role to play. "So tell us," Kunle said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "How did you two meet?" "We met in a bookstore," she said smoothly. "There was one last copy of a book on personal finance. We both reached for it." Lara laughed softly. "That sounds like Tony, always hoarding finance books like secrets to immortality." "We ended up deciding to share the book," Adanna continued. "We'd meet up every weekend to read and discuss it. One chapter turned into hours of conversation." "And coffee," Tony chimed in, picking up the thread. "Lots of coffee. She hated my taste at first." "Because it was terrible," Adanna shot back, surprising even herself with the ease of the reply. "He drank it black with nothing, like a punishment." They all laughed. For a brief moment, Adanna forgot she was lying. "So, how long have you been married?" Lara asked, eyes sparkling with intrigue. 6 months, Tony replied at the same time. Adanna said, 8 months. There was a beat of silence. Adanna quickly added, "I always count from the engagement. It still feels like part of the marriage, doesn't it?" Tony nodded quickly. "Time blurs when you're happy." They raised their glasses. "To love and timing," Kunle said, and they clinked in agreement. As the night wore on, Adanna and Tony wove more threads into their fictional life. He spoke about a cat named Simba. She mentioned being allergic to animal fur. Tony quickly added that Simba now lived with his sister in Jikwoyi. It was almost a game. One lie bouncing off another. Improvisation in perfect rhythm. But under the table, their knees touched again. This time, neither pulled away. As the drinks disappeared and the laughter mellowed, Lara and Kunle finally rose to leave. "We must do this again," Lara insisted. "I'm planning a small dinner party in 2 weeks. You'll be there." "Of course," Tony said, helping Adanna up. They waved goodbye, and just like that, the performance ended. Outside on the street, the air had cooled and silence fell between them. "I owe you," Tony said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know I dragged you into something crazy." "You think?" Adanna raised a brow. "Pretending to be your wife to avoid 2 strangers? That's a new level of absurd." "Lara is friends with my ex," he explained, his voice lower now, more real. "Long story. I panicked. You saved me. "You owe me flowers," she said. He smiled. Done. They stood there, just looking at each other under the quiet Abuja sky. "Do you want to ride home?" he offered. "No need," she said. "I live close." She turned to go, her papers still in slight disarray under her arm. "Adanna," she paused. "Thank you, for tonight." She nodded and walked away. But something had shifted, something small, something she couldn't yet name. Monday morning arrived with its usual rush. At Royal Corps Auditors, the office was already buzzing by 8:15 a.m. But Adanna Ease sat unusually still at her desk, staring blankly at the spreadsheet on her screen. Her hands moved with practiced ease, typing figures, analyzing numbers, but her mind wasn't there. It was still with Tony. She had spent the entire weekend in a daze, sorting her scattered reports, catching up on the files she'd lost in Friday's chaos, and replaying that strange, electrifying night over and over in her head. What puzzled her wasn't just the unexpected intimacy of it all. It was how comfortable it had felt, how easily they had played along. She hadn't lied that smoothly since childhood, yet with Tony, the deception had come naturally, like a script they'd unknowingly memorized together. She barely knew him, yet she couldn't forget the way he'd looked at her when their story unraveled. His silent plea, his relieved smile, his eyes that seemed to say, "Thank you for saving me." It should have been a ridiculous, forgettable night, but it wasn't. It clung to her. At 11:02 a.m., just as she finished a call with a client, the receptionist, Patricia, stepped into the department with a look of quiet mischief. "Madam Adanna," Patricia said, holding a large bouquet of tulips, yellow and white. "Delivery for you." Every head in the room turned. Adanna blinked. "Me? You're the only Adanna in this building, Abi," Patricia said with a knowing smile. "Someone is crushing." The flowers were stunning, fresh, carefully arranged, elegant. Not a single rose in sight. She hadn't told anyone her favorite flowers were tulips. No one ever asked. A small cream-colored envelope was nestled among the stems. She opened it, her heart pounding. "For my wife. Dinner this Friday, 8 p.m. No audience this time. Café Lumière, Asokoro. Tony P.S. You were brilliant." She stared at the card, her fingers trembling slightly. Her chest was tight with something she couldn't name. Was it anticipation? Intrigue? Caution? "Babe," Denise whispered from the next desk, leaning over. "Who sent that one?" "Just a friend," Adanna said, slipping the card into her drawer. But the smile she tried to hide said otherwise. At home that night, she stood in front of her wardrobe, towel wrapped around her, water dripping from her curls. She hadn't even decided whether she would go to dinner yet, but her fingers were already sifting through outfits. She paused at a simple wine-colored dress she had never worn before, something she bought months ago for an office event she never ended up attending. It still had the tag on. She stared at it for a long time. This is insane, she thought. I don't even know him. And yet, for the first time in what felt like years, she felt like something was happening to her, something outside work, outside her carefully controlled routine. Friday night, 8:05 p.m. Adanna stepped into Café Lumière, heart drumming louder than her heels on the floor. She smoothed the folds of her wine-colored dress and exhaled. This is not a date. It's just dinner. Her heart, however, was not on the same page. Tony was seated in a corner booth, wearing a navy blue shirt, and that same casual confidence that had drawn her in the first time. He stood when he saw her, smiling with something soft behind his eyes. "You came," he said, smiling with both surprise and relief. "It would have been rude to ignore my husband's invitation," she replied, sliding into the chair across from him. He laughed, and it was softer than she remembered. Less performative, more real. A waiter arrived with a bottle of vintage wine before they even ordered. "The usual, sir?" the man asked with a slight bow. Tony nodded, then turned to Adanna. "They already know what I like." She lifted a brow. "You come here often?" "When I'm in the country." "Where else are you usually?" He shrugged, sipping water. "Dubai, Paris, sometimes Singapore. Depends on the project." Adanna blinked. "You travel that often for architecture?" Tony paused, smiled, like he'd just remembered she didn't know. "I'm not just an architect, Adanna. I co-own Adedayo Urban Estates. We handle luxury development projects across Africa and the Middle East." She stared. "Wait, as in Adedayo Towers in Maitama?" He gave a modest nod. "Among others." Adanna froze. That building alone had made headlines. Apartments there started at 650 million naira. She swallowed hard. So you're a billionaire. He winced slightly. I don't usually lead with that. But you crashed into me on the street like a man running from his landlord. They both burst into laughter. That night wasn't planned. I was supposed to meet my project team, but I stopped by the bar because I ran into someone from the past. He hesitated. Laura? Tony nodded. She's an old link to a very messy breakup. I didn't want her reporting back to someone who used to, let's just say, enjoy my downfall. Adanna softened. There was a depth to his words she hadn't expected. You were afraid she'd tell your ex you were still single? Not just that, he said, looking up at her. I was afraid she'd say I was alone, like I hadn't moved on, like I was still the man who couldn't be loved. Silence passed between them. Then Adanna said, Well, you definitely looked like a man in distress when you grabbed my arm. And you played the role flawlessly. I was in awe. She smiled. To be honest, I didn't know I had it in me. I've never lied like that before. But you're an accountant. You're supposed to deal in truth and order. Tony smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Maybe I got tired of being that man, the one people expected me to be. He leaned back, studying her. And you? What do people expect of you, Adanna? She thought about it. To be reliable, steady, productive. I'm the woman who never misses a deadline, never calls in sick, never causes drama. Just useful. That sounds exhausting. It is. A beat of silence. The air between them felt intimate, like a secret being passed without words. Maybe that's why I liked Friday night, she admitted, pretending to be someone else even just for an hour. It reminded me I'm more than just someone's backup plan or a dependable office worker. The runway at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport shimmered under the late morning sun as Adanna stepped onto the sleek black tarmac. Her heels clicked lightly against the ground, the wind gently tugging at the hem of her ivory jumpsuit. Ahead of her stood a Gulfstream G700 private jet, sleek, polished, and waiting. She turned to Tony. You didn't say private jet when you said let's go to Lagos. Would you have come if I did? He asked with a half smile. Honestly? I might have brought a backup outfit. He chuckled and offered her his hand as they climbed the steps into a world so far removed from her own that she felt like she was floating. Inside, the jet smelled of leather and soft sandalwood. Cream-colored seats, gold accents, a glass of fresh hibiscus tea already waiting for her. The steward greeted them like old friends. Adanna sank into her seat, heart fluttering, not from fear but from something far more terrifying: excitement. The car waiting for them at the Murtala Muhammad Airport was a matte black Range Rover autobiography, its windows tinted so dark they swallowed the sun. By the time they arrived at Tony's beach house in Victoria Island, Adanna wasn't even pretending to be surprised anymore. The mansion rose from the ground like a palace of clean white stone, glass walls facing the Atlantic, and staff hurried forward to collect their luggage and offer cold towels and fresh coconut water. You live here? She whispered as they stepped into a living room that smelled of vanilla and ocean breeze. I stay here when I want to disappear, Tony said. So this is your hideout? It was, he said, looking directly at her. Until now. For a moment, she forgot the world. Forgot Abuja. Forgot her reports, her empty apartment, her routines. Here, with him, she felt like someone else. Someone free. The moment Adanna stepped into the master suite of Tony's Victoria Island beach mansion, the sheer luxury nearly stole her breath. High ceilings, glass walls overlooking the ocean, soft, earth-toned decor, and a private terrace with sheer curtains blowing gently in the breeze. Everything smelled faintly of citrus and salt. Tony walked in behind her. You can take the main suite, he said. I'll stay in one of the guest rooms. Why? Afraid your pretend wife might bite? She teased. He tilted his head. Maybe I'm hoping she will. Silence stretched between them like warm honey. Neither of them moved. Then he stepped forward, closing the distance. Slowly, gently. You know I haven't stopped thinking about you since Abuja? Neither have I, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. His hands found her waist, not hurried but firm. His touch was warm, grounding. She reached up, fingertips brushing the edge of his jaw, the soft stubble beneath her thumb electric. Tell me to stop, he said. She didn't. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him. It started slow, but once their lips found rhythm, it deepened like a wave crashing into shore. He pulled her closer, her body flush against his. Her hands slid beneath his shirt, over sculpted muscle and warm skin. She felt wanted, seen, desired, not for her usefulness, her logic, her stability, but for her. Tony lifted her onto the edge of the bed with ease, his lips never leaving hers. She wrapped her legs around his waist, breathless, his mouth trailing down her neck. The air between them thickened with heat, with need. He peeled off her jumpsuit slowly, reverently, like unwrapping something sacred. She tugged his shirt open, buttons scattering. His skin against hers was almost too much. They explored, moans stifled into kisses. When he finally sank into her, their bodies fit like puzzle pieces, moving to a rhythm that felt ancient and perfect. They became the soundtrack to something raw and beautiful. He whispered her name against her collarbone as she arched beneath him. She clung to him as the tension built and broke in waves. And when they finally stilled, tangled in silk sheets and shallow breaths, he kissed her shoulder and held her close. Neither of them spoke right away. There was no need to, because whatever had started that night in Abuja had shifted into something real, undeniable, and far more dangerous than either of them had planned. Later, as the evening breeze cooled the room and Adanna stood wrapped in one of Tony's soft linen shirts, staring out at the ocean, she felt him come up behind her. He rested his chin on her shoulder. "Still feel like pretending?" he asked. She turned, smiling lazily. "No, I think the pretending's over." They walked along the beach barefoot after dinner, their fingers brushing as the sunset turned the water gold. Tony told her stories about restoring colonial buildings in Zanzibar and building women-led housing projects in Rwanda. Every word made Adanna look at him not just as a billionaire, but as a man who cared deeply about legacy. Then, just as the moon began to rise, a voice called out from behind them. "Tony?" They both turned. A woman stood at the edge of the property, tall, beautiful. Her skin shimmered under the moonlight and her eyes locked on Tony with familiarity. Adanna instantly recognized the shift in his body. Tension. "What are you doing here?" he asked, tone tight. The woman walked closer. "Relax. I saw your jet on the tarmac this morning. I had a feeling you were coming to Lagos." She turned to Adanna, scanning her from head to toe. "You must be the new lie." Adanna's breath caught. "Excuse me? Let me guess," the woman continued, her voice smooth like venom. "You're playing the part now? The girlfriend?" Tony stepped forward. "That's enough, Tessa." Adanna's eyes widened. Tessa, the ex, the one he didn't want Lara telling stories to, the one he had run from. "I'm not here to fight," Tessa said. "I just thought you'd have the decency to come clean to her before she finds out the truth the hard way." "Tessa, you always do this," she snapped. "You let women walk into your world, charm them with softness, but you don't tell them what it really costs to love a man like you." She turned to Adanna. "Good luck," she said quietly. "He's everything and nothing at the same time." And with that, she disappeared into the night. They didn't speak on the walk back. Inside, Adanna poured herself a glass of wine she didn't touch. Tony stood by the window, facing the ocean. "Who was she really?" she finally asked. "Tessa was someone I loved, years ago. She knew everything about me, my flaws, my fears, my money, but she wanted control. And when I wouldn't give it, she used everything she knew to hurt me. You never mentioned her, because I didn't want her ghost following us into this." Adanna's voice trembled. "Us?" "Yes," Tony said, stepping toward her. "Us. I don't know what this is yet, Adanna, but I haven't felt this alive in a long time." She turned away. "That's the second time you've said that I make you feel alive, but what happens when reality sets in, when this stops feeling magical? Then we fight for it." "Tony," she said, softer now. "I like you. I do. But I can't be the next woman who gets hurt just because you're still healing from the last one." A long silence passed. Then he said, "Then give me a chance to prove I'm not that man anymore." The next morning, Tony offers her something unexpected. A weekend trip to Eilish Beach, away from staff, luxury, and ex-girlfriends. Just the two of them. One condition. We tell the truth. No pretending. No curated versions of ourselves. Just you. Just me. And if we're brave enough, whatever comes next. By dawn, Lagos was stirring again. Horns in the far distance, ocean breeze still salty and warm. Adanna lay in bed, watching golden light spill across the sheets, her limbs still aching from the night before. She turned her head to find Tony already up, shirtless by the window, sipping coffee. His back was to her, but she could feel the weight in his shoulders. Tessa's arrival had unsettled him, unsettled them both. "You okay?" she asked softly, pulling the sheets to her chest. He turned, surprised. "Didn't mean to wake you. Didn't mean to sleep with a billionaire, but here we are," she teased gently. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I booked a boat. For Elash. Just us, no staff, no ghosts from the past." "Elash?" She sat up. That private beach place all the rich folks run to when Lagos gets too loud? The same, he said. I need to get away from all this. With you. For one weekend. I'll pack. The boat cut smoothly through the water. They arrived just before noon at the eyelash beach, welcomed by swaying palms, white sand, and the quiet lull of waves stretching endlessly into the horizon. The beach house was smaller, simpler than the mansion, yet somehow more intimate. Wooden floors, handmade woven rugs, a hammock facing the sea. They were barefoot most of the time, laughing, drinking coconut water, dancing to old Nigerian soul records on vinyl, and most importantly, talking. Truly talking. That night, lying on a beach blanket beneath a sky overflowing with stars, Tony reached for her hand. Let's play a game, he said. Truth, only truth. You ask a question, I answer. Then I ask, deal? She nodded. Okay. Have you ever truly been in love? He was quiet for a long time. No, not really. I've had lust, I've had obsession, but never someone who challenged me, calmed me, made me feel safe and alive. Until now. Her throat tightened. My turn, he said. Why did you say yes to pretending to be my wife that night? She looked up at the stars. Because I was tired of being invisible. For once, someone needed me. I wasn't just the dependable worker or the single friend. I was something exciting. It felt good. He kissed the back of her hand. You are exciting, Adanna. You always were. The next morning, Tony brewed fresh coffee while Adanna sat on the porch, wrapped in his hoodie, legs tucked beneath her. I need to tell you something, he said. She looked up. The reason I ran from Tessa that night in Abuja, it wasn't just pride, it was shame. He sat beside her. Tessa wasn't just an ex. She was the woman I almost married. I built a life for her, bought a house, introduced her to my board. But when my mum fell ill, and I asked her to delay the wedding, she left me. Cold. Told people I used her, that I was emotionally unstable. I spiraled after that, closed off, never trusted anyone. Adanna swallowed. I'm not her, Tony. I know. That's why I'm scared of you. She raised an eyebrow. Scared? Because what I feel for you is already deeper than what I ever felt for her. Silence, then she said softly, I'm scared too. The weekend at Ilash had felt like a dream. Sun-kissed mornings, soft moans whispered between sheets, long walks with fingers laced like promises. But by Monday morning, reality came crashing in. Hard. Adanna was barely 5 minutes into her workday when Patricia, the receptionist, came rushing to her desk with wide eyes and a phone in hand. Babe, you're trending on Twitter. Adanna blinked. What? You and Tony Adedayo. Look! Adanna's heart dropped. How did they even get this? Paparazzi, Patricia whispered. You know they stalk that beach every December. Suddenly the office felt smaller, the air thicker. Colleagues were whispering, phones buzzing, screens showing her face in cropped, zoomed-in frames. And then her intercom buzzed. Adanna, please come to my office, said the familiar voice of her boss, Mrs. Chioma Oche, managing partner at Lagos Abuja Financial Consultants. Her voice was cold. Mrs. Oche was already standing when Adanna entered. Her suit was crisp, expression unreadable. A printed screenshot of the viral post lay on her desk like evidence in a courtroom. Sit, Adanna did. I'll get straight to it. Our firm represents several real estate clients, including Adedayo Urban Estates. Your involvement with Mr. Tony Adedayo is a conflict of interest, an ethics violation. But I haven't done anything wrong. This wasn't planned, I didn't... Adanna, it's not about feelings. It's about perception. Adanna swallowed hard. So what happens now? Mrs. Oche's voice softened, just a little. You're good at your job. You've worked hard. But we can't afford a PR scandal tied to a romantic entanglement with a billionaire client. You either submit a resignation letter quietly by Friday, or we terminate your contract. No references. Silence. Just the ticking of the clock. Adanna stood slowly. Thank you for your honesty. I'm sorry it had to be this way, her boss added. Adanna gave a polite nod and walked out with her back straight, even as the world tilted under her feet. Tony was waiting for her in her apartment by 8 p.m., holding a bottle of champagne and a hopeful smile, until he saw her face. What happened? I'm losing my job, his brows furrowed. What? Why? Because I was careless, she snapped. Because someone took pictures. Because I let myself get caught up in this... fantasy. He stepped forward. Adanna, It's not a fantasy for me. Easy for you to say. You're a billionaire. You'll still have your company, your power, your Maybach. I gave up everything for a kiss on a beach. Don't do that. Don't make me the villain for loving you. You never said you loved me. He froze and then quietly, almost in disbelief. I do. I love you. Tears blurred her vision. Then why didn't you protect me? I didn't know how, he said, voice cracking. But I will. From now on, I will. He held out the champagne. Let's toast to change, to quitting jobs and choosing chaos. Let's figure this out together. Adanna looked at the bottle, then at him. You want me to be your scandal or your partner? I want you to be my wife. Silence. Her chest tightened. Pretend? He shook his head. For real this time. The next morning, Adanna woke up in Tony's arms, her head on his bare chest, her hand resting where his heartbeat thudded steadily. He hadn't taken back the words. I want you to be my wife. He had said it without blinking, without fear, and now she couldn't stop hearing it. Tony stood in the sun-drenched courtyard of Adanna Urban Estates HQ, looking more like a cover model than a man with a scandal on his shoulders. Blue linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, sunglasses hanging from his collar. Dozens of reporters were present. Phones, microphones, blinking lights. Tony cleared his throat. The hush was immediate. I'd like to make something clear, he said. The woman in the photos with me is not a mystery. Her name is Adanna Okafor. She's brilliant, beautiful, and the woman I intend to marry. Gasps, flashes, a frenzy of whispers. Yes, we met under interesting circumstances. But nothing about my love for her is fabricated. I'm not ashamed of her. If anyone has questions, you can direct them to me, not her. She's off limits. Tony and Adanna trended globally, but not everyone was celebrating. Adanna was alone when Tessa showed up. No door knock, no warning. Just her in black heels and red lipstick, walking into the lobby of Adanna's apartment like she owned the building. You're not answering Tony's calls, she said coolly. So he sent me. No, he didn't. Tessa smiled. No, he didn't. But I knew you'd be here. Because women like you always need time to process. What do you want? She dropped a flash drive onto the counter. Proof. Of? That your perfect fiancé isn't as clean as you think. Adanna didn't move. His company? The latest luxury housing development he's building in Lekki? Funded by shell accounts routed through offshore companies, some of which are registered under your name. Adanna blinked. What? You were listed as a temporary consultant on the fund transfer, Tessa said with a shrug. Don't believe me? Plug it in. Adanna did. And there it was. Emails, signed contracts, spreadsheets. Her name, tied to money she had never seen. You're lying. I wish I was. Tessa turned to leave. You really think men like Tony change, sweetheart? You're just another thrill. A softer version of me. The difference is, he didn't love me enough to lie this good. She left, and the room suddenly felt cold. Adanna didn't wait. She barged into Tony's mansion the next morning, fire in her eyes. Why is my name attached to illegal money transfers? Tony stood still. It's not what you think. Then explain it, because Tessa showed me proof. Proof that could ruin me. He exhaled. Those accounts were set up years ago by my CFO. I didn't know until recently that your name was used. We were trying to delete the trail, not hide it from you. And you didn't think to tell me? I was protecting you. No, you were controlling the narrative. Just like every powerful man does when they think women can't handle the truth. She grabbed her purse. I quit my job for you, Tony. I risked everything. And all this time, I was just another piece in your story. He stepped forward, desperate. I love you. I'm trying to fix it. I don't need you to fix anything. I needed you to tell me the truth. And just like that, she walked out. Had been 12 days since Adanna walked away from Tony and left Abuja. 12 days of silence. No texts, no calls, no updates. She spent her days working freelance accounting jobs from home, barely speaking to anyone, her nights sleepless and her heart swinging between anger and longing. Then on the 13th morning, her doorbell rang. She receives a letter from a lawyer. Inside, a notarized document removing her name from all company records, a full apology, and a handwritten note. I don't want you tied to me by paper. I want you to choose me freely. Tony. And just when she thinks it's over, she receives a plane ticket, a dress, and a message. If you're willing to take a leap with me, meet me where it all began. Come back to where it started, I'll be waiting. I won't ask you to pretend again. Tony. Her hands shook. Not just from surprise, but from the war between her head and heart. Attached to the back of the ticket was another handwritten line. You once walked through the streets of Abuja with me, pretending to be my wife. This time, I want you to walk in as the real thing. Adanna stepped off the plane with cautious steps, heart pounding. Her black silk gown hugged her curves, her afro was pulled into a sleek puff, her skin glowing like moonlight. At the very bar where it all began, under strings of warm yellow lights and the gentle hum of jazz music, Tony stood waiting. He wore a navy suit, no tie, his collar open, his heart on his face. When she entered, every head turned, but he only saw her. You came, he said, voice cracking. You invited me. I didn't know if you would. I almost didn't. He stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers. I didn't bring a ring tonight, he said softly. Not because I don't want to marry you, but because this can't be about diamonds or declarations anymore. It has to be about choice. Your choice. Tony, I'm scared. So am I. But love isn't always about certainty. Sometimes it's about choosing the chaos over the comfort. Silence, then she asked, why me? His answer was quiet but steady. Because you saw me at my most ridiculous when you stayed. You turned a fake story into the most real thing I've ever had. You make me want to be honest, to be better. You're not a chapter in my life, Adanna. You're the entire plot. Her throat tightened. He stepped even closer. So this is me asking, not for a performance, not for appearances, but for something real. Something forever. Tony, I quit my job. I got dragged by the internet. I was lied to. And I'd spend the rest of my life making that up to you, if you'll let me. Adanna looked into his eyes, saw everything. Fear, love, vulnerability. And suddenly, it all made sense. This was real. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Yes, you'll marry me? Yes, I'll love you, and yes, I'll walk beside you, not just as your wife, your partner. And then she kissed him, right there, in the middle of the bar, in front of strangers and bartenders and clinking glasses. It was full circle. Only this time, no pretending. The villa in Tuscany smelled of fresh lemon and jasmine. Adanna leaned against the balcony of their honeymoon suite, now officially Mrs. Adanna Adedayo, her white sundress dancing in the breeze. Tony came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. So, he whispered, from fake wife to Mrs. Billionaire, not bad for a weekend job. She laughed, turning to face him. Who knew bumping into a stranger on the street could turn into forever? He kissed her forehead. I did. A voice called from downstairs, Teddy and Lauren, now visiting friends. Come on, lovebirds, it's time for wine tasting. Adanna smiled. You ready, Mr. Adedayo? With you? Always. They walked downstairs hand in hand, laughter trailing behind them like the echo of something pure, something hard-earned, something real.